Hey ladies and gentlemen, my name is RJ Borja and I'm here in Brazil, and I'd love to share with you guys some sweet things that I've been learning from the Word. So first I want to share with you how in the medieval times there was a way of torturing. There's a lot of ways, unfortunately, and there was a way to execute people. And what they would do is they'd tie a man's body to 4 different horses, 2 legs to 2 different horses, 2 arms to 2 different horses, and they would get pulled in different directions at the same time. You see, this is a description of distraction. Being distracted is being pulled in many different directions at the same time. You see, we live in a world today with many distractions. And I want to share with you a story from the book of Luke, which is going to be found in chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. This is Mary and Martha. So we'll set the scene. We hear a whole lot of talking. We hear a whole lot of noise. Jesus, 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 Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming. And Martha and Mary are in their house. Martha hears this. Jesus is coming. Is my house in order? Is everything good? Okay. She's ready, right? Just like this kitchen. Maybe I'll go invite Jesus in. She goes out there and she invites Jesus in. And we're going to start here. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, it will not be taken away from her." And that is Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. You see, I believe every Christian can discover the hindrance from true rest, the hindrances from true rest, by acknowledging 3 issues that keep us from the best. So I'm linking true rest to the best, and there's 3 issues that will keep us from those things. The first one is distraction. Like the medieval times when they would pull people apart, Mary was distracted in the kitchen making preparations. Kitchen just like this. Here in Brazil, we call this churrascaria. We make churrasco here, which is a type of steak, which is so delicious. And she was in the kitchen. She was working. She was slaving. She was trying to get everything ready. But why? Why was she just being distracted? Many times before, we've heard sermons on this where it's just, Mary is just so distracted. She is distraught. She is so on and so forth. But why though? But why? You see, I want to share that because of Mary's culture, this is what motivated her. Because of her worldview, this is what drove her to pursue, to serve Jesus the way that she served him. You see, in these days, a man named Alfred Edenstein described this culture that they had back then. Thus it was declared that the entertainment of travelers was as great as a matter of the reception of the Shekinah. This gives a fresh meaning to the admonition of the epistle addressed specifically to Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 2. "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." You see, the Shekinah glory is the presence of God. Now let's take one moment to think about that. The presence of God. Okay? This is what's sitting in the back of her mind. Anybody that comes in my house, I should serve them as if I'm serving the presence of God. It was even said to be hospitable to people is better than to make the morning sacrifices. This is a big deal. Hospitality is huge. It's massive. But then you tie in the fact that Jesus Christ walks into your house, who you believe is God. What are you supposed to do other than serve? This is the backbone of your culture, of your womanhood for Martha. Of course she's going to serve. She's going to go out of her way to do everything she can to bring to Jesus exactly what he needs. She doesn't want to leave him. She doesn't want to leave him without. So she goes through all the hustle and bustle in the kitchen, preparing churrasco. During that time, it probably wasn't churrasco, but she was in the kitchen. She was preparing. She wanted to give him what's best. Now, you may be saying, well, it was Jesus. Of course she should be sitting there at his feet and listening. Just like Mary. Of course she should have been doing that. Well, the thing is that Jesus called out another man a couple of chapters before in Luke chapter 7, verse 36 to 50. You see, we find a woman in a Pharisee's house where Jesus is getting to hang out, getting to relax, getting to enjoy himself with these Pharisees. This Pharisee invited him in the house, and this woman is crying. She's weeping. She's washing Jesus' feet. You probably remember this story. You see, what happens is that this man starts to think, Pharisee, if Jesus was a prophet, then he totally would know who this woman is that's touching his feet. And Jesus says this, who would love more, the person that's forgiven more or forgiven less? And Peter says, of course, a person that's forgiven more is going to love more. You see, Jesus calls out this Pharisee and says, hey, you didn't wash my feet. You didn't anoint my head. You didn't kiss me. The thing is that this was the norm. It wasn't anything wrong. It was culturally acceptable. It was the expected. So what's going on here? Is the thing that we're not supposed to work, or we are supposed to work, or like, where does this come into play? Because obviously, in Martha's being distracted in the kitchen, Jesus wasn't satisfied with that. When she exclaimed to him, Jesus, Mary's not helping me. Well, the second issue is being preoccupied. You see, Martha was preoccupied with her culture, the backbone of her womanhood, to be hospitable. And I think oftentimes we are preoccupied with our pursuits and our desires. You see, I think in our culture, success, happiness, fame, these things climb to the top of the ladder of our desires, of our lives. Not only in the U.S., not only here in Brazil, but I'll share with you a story from here in Brazil. There's a young man named Guilherme. I met him a couple weeks ago. He came to our grupinho. A grupinho is a small group. It's a small group, and what we do there is we get together and we share our different prayer requests. We talk. We figure out how do we continue to walk together in community. You see, Guilherme was visiting because he wants to know if he wants to come to the Bible Institute or not. And he shared with me, as we're praying, he shared with me, hey, can you please pray for these couple different things? And as he's sharing with me, I'm starting to think, this young man's seeking for something. He's searching because there seems to be something off. I don't know what it is, but there seems to be something off. And let's take a moment and accept the culture, the context of this. I'm American, and he's Brazilian. He speaks Portuguese. I'm learning Portuguese. So oftentimes I miss a couple of details that are pretty important, and yeah, you can fill in the rest. So I asked him after we're done praying, hey, can you give me more information? Like, what exactly is it that you are seeking after? Like, what are you trying to figure out? Like, are you trying to understand where to go to serve God, or? And he said, no, I just want to know if I'm supposed to serve God or not. So this is a good question. It's a good question. And we continue talking. Yes, he's a believer. So I kind of asked him more questions, and he says, I just want to know, because if I'm going to serve God like 100%, like that means that I need to do everything, and everything should be devoted to him. Like I can't do anything less than 100% if I'm going to say that I'm going to serve God. And I asked him, like, well, what's the other side to it? And he said, well, then if I didn't serve God 100%, then I'd be able to work and get money and get food and clothes and have a house. And I asked him, do you know what Matthew chapter 6 verse 33 says? He said no, and I got to share that with him. And the thing is that he was so preoccupied with his own plans that he forgot that Jesus had told him, or he didn't know, or he didn't expect, that he would provide for all these things if we pursue after the kingdom of God first and his righteousness. You see, we become so preoccupied with our own ambitions that we miss the fact that Jesus is already wanting to do these things. He put Jesus on the back burner. Martha put him on the front burner and was serving, but she was distracted. Now she's preoccupied. Mary, sitting at Jesus' feet content. Interesting. You see, there's three things that will keep us from what's best. Okay, three things that will keep us from the best. These hindrances keep us from true rest. These hindrances kept Martha from being rested. Mary was totally rested. Guilherme, he wasn't rested. He was searching. He was trying to figure out, do I just keep on working? Do I keep on going to school and earning this degree so I can just do what I want to do? Because if I serve God, that means I have to do everything for him. And that doesn't make sense. And the thing is, we came to the conclusion is that if I'm going to serve God, I have to do it 100%. So being preoccupied. Luke chapter 8 says something very, very, very sweet. Luke chapter 8 has a very sweet parable in it. Jesus shares with us about the 4 different soils. In those 4 different soils, one of them is among the thorns. You see, the word of God is spoken of as a seed. And the sower is throwing the seed everywhere. He's planting it. And what happens is the seed that falls into the thorns, it grows, but then it gets choked out. By what? By the worries and cares of this world. It gets choked out by the ambitions that this world has for monetary value, for fame, for all these good things. But are they the best? The hindrances that keep us from the best, so far, preoccupation, being preoccupied, being distracted. You see, Guilherme was being choked out. This seed was being choked out in Guilherme's life because of these preoccupations, distractions. You see, when we become so enthralled in all of these things in life, we just start to become overwhelmed. It is said of Martha, let's read this over again. Luke chapter 10. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." You see, Martha was very overwhelmed. You see, in this world, there is no point where we just finally reach it and everything becomes perfectly fine. There's no such thing. You see, rest can't be found in this world in and of itself. You see, we seek to earn enough money so that our kids can go to school and they don't have to struggle as much as we did. We seek to earn enough money so that we can help our parents out. We seek to earn enough money so we can get everybody in the same place and live in the same place, or to be so successful, or to so on and so forth. There's so many ambitions that we have, and so often we dislocate that from what God is doing. We dislocate it, we become distracted, we become preoccupied, and then we become so overwhelmed with everything that's going on. You see, this is an issue that totally keeps us from the best. It's keeping Guilherme from the best. It's keeping Martha from the best right now. You see, she contemplated. Her frustration was exhibited. She showed it as she was making preparations in the kitchen. She became so frustrated that she came out of the kitchen and said something to Jesus. "Hey, Jesus, don't you even care?" Of course Jesus cares. Of course he does. But Jesus doesn't correct her and says, "Hey, you shouldn't be serving in the kitchen right now. You know, that's not okay. I don't want any food, and so on and so forth." No, it was a good thing. But he said that there's one thing better. And Mary had chosen it. Three hindrances. Distraction, being preoccupied, and being overwhelmed. Now, interesting enough, we see Martha again, and we see Mary in Luke chapter 14. Okay, this is after this account. And unfortunately, the brother has just died. Jesus gets word, and he goes to their house. Again, Martha's in her house, Mary's in the house, and they hear, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming. So what happens? Martha gets up and runs. She runs to Jesus. Can you believe this? So a woman gets up out of her house, books it to Jesus, and she wants to know, "Jesus, how come you didn't come sooner?" A sign of despair. "My brother's dead. Where were you?" But then she shows a sign of hope. "But I know that you can still do something. I know you can." So she runs back, gets Mary, and says, "Mary, Jesus wants to see you." So Mary comes. Now let's just think about this. Mary didn't go to Jesus. She heard that Jesus was coming, but she didn't go outside. She stayed inside. When she came to Jesus, she only showed signs of despair. She didn't show signs of hope, brokenness, of hurt. And to be expected, her brother has just passed away. But Martha's signs of hope are very interesting in this situation, where she was just complaining a couple chapters ago. She had no help. She was overwhelmed. She was distracted. But now she seems to have a little bit more focus on who Jesus is. "Jesus, raises Lazarus from the dead. Praise the Lord. What an awesome thing, right? And then we see Martha again in the kitchen, same kitchen, different situation, but she's serving again. And it says that Lazarus is reclined at the table. Isn't this interesting? It wasn't that she was serving that was wrong, right? We've said that. We've been covering this. But it's that she wasn't content. Her distractions were keeping her from what was best, from the true rest. You see, now she served out of thankfulness, out of gratitude for who Jesus is and what he had done. You know, you're saying, yeah, I want to go to school. I want to get a job. I want to be successful. I want to earn money. Those things are good. But what is best? What is the absolute best? 3 things can keep us from true rest. Keep you from true rest. Keep me from true rest. But only one place will provide that, and it's in the presence of Jesus. You see, Mary found herself in the presence of Jesus, sitting there, listening, and soaking in all of those sweet words that he had to say. Martha was distracted. Mary, focused. Mary had her total rest sitting there before him. Martha was distracted. But now in chapter 14, we see Martha, she's not distracted, but she is totally serving out of the overflow of what Jesus had just done and the faith that she had in him. You see, she had found rest even while serving in the kitchen. Those hindrances weren't hindering anymore, but she enjoyed what she was doing, and she worshiped the Lord through serving. So I have a couple of applications here, a couple of thoughts. You see, our generation has a fear of missing out. This is a huge thing where we are consumed with our cellular devices. We're consumed with media and all of the things that are going on in the world, but we just totally miss out on the fact that God is literally calling out to us, that he wants to sit with us. He wants to talk with us. You see, how are we ever going to know what God's plan is for us, one, and what he's doing, and how do we jump into that plan when we're just totally overwhelmed, totally distracted, totally preoccupied with our own desires, our own ambitions? We got to stop and think. You got to stop and think. Maybe set an alarm on your iPad that says, stop and think. So you just stop and think. Have some time to sit there with the Lord. Have some time to meditate. Number 2, application. Remember, if we're going to call ourselves Christians, we have to live in submission. You see, Guilherme, he wasn't living in submission, really. He was trying to figure it out, which is good. And maybe you're trying to figure it out, which is great. But don't forget, we got to live in submission. Whether we're in the kitchen or whether we're sitting before him, both of those places are good places to be. But both of them have to be in submission. Contentment. That's where we're going to find our rest. And that's where we're going to find our true happiness. The third, I simply just want to say, take time. Take time and acknowledge him. Take time and sit. Take time and read. Don't get distracted by the fear of FOMO, the fear of missing out, the fear of wanting to be involved in everything. Don't get distracted by these things. But just take time to enjoy. To stop and say, wow, Lord, look what you've done. You brought me to Brazil. I have the privilege of serving here as a missionary, to get to know all these people, to learn another language, which you confused. But not to be distracted when life gets really hard and Portuguese is rough, or to get distracted with the many things that I have to do at school, at Liberty University, and the other opportunities I have for ministry. But to keep the focus, to remember that I am finding my rest in Jesus. 3 things will keep you from true rest. 3 things will keep you from what's best. Being distracted, being preoccupied, and being overwhelmed. Now let's serve the Lord together, and let's do it faithfully. Thanks.